Very good.
Jai Shimanara, let me check. It's
Jai
recording.
Mataji.
Yes, so please introduce the subject.
Thank you, Mataji. My obeisances to you. Thank you so much for inviting me. So, what I wanted to discuss was we had a very, very interesting series on the koshas, the 5 koshas, so to speak, the pancha koshas, and that was really inspiring for all of us neophytes, because what was really interesting was how you connected the dots, so to speak. You started off with these with the descriptions of the individual koshas and what they represent, and you talked about the gross body, the subtle body. You talked about you distinguished between the mind and the intellect, and then you got to the Anandamaya kosha, and that was really, really interesting. And then what was fascinating, the real penny drop moment, so to speak, was when you linked yoga and the dissolution, the reverse process of yoga, and you link that to Shiva Tattva. That was really, really fascinating. So obviously that sort of inspires a lot of us to go back to the Taittiriya Upanishad. I think it's 2.2.1. 2.2.1. I think that's the. I don't want to sort of speculate, but I think that's the relevant part. So my question, Mataji, is that when you take that to the average sort of neophyte Dharmi person, now we're armed with this knowledge, Mataji, and we have this beautiful knowledge from the Vedas, the Yajurveda, about these koshas. Then you think, right, well, how do I make use of this knowledge in my dharmic practice in everyday life? Because you now recognize that, number one, you are not just the material body. There is all these other things. But you're then thinking, right, well, how do I take this to a quote unquote transcendental level? How do I make use of this in my sort of sadhana? And so you then start reading around it, and you think to yourself, well, is this knowledge given to us because it allows us to, number one, assume that we are, number one, carry away the viewpoint that we are not the material body, but number two, we are also not the sum of our thoughts. Number three is that intellect is really good, but again, there's more to life. We're not just the intellect either. And then you talked about Yoga Maya and the fact that that's there for a reason. The Ananda Maya Kosha is there because it enables us to perform bhakti, because we have to do it in a sense of separation, almost artificially, so to speak. So what my question to you is, Mataji, is where does this knowledge take us in an everyday life? What do we do with it, I guess?
Okay, so our everyday life is at the same time the same and different for different people at different times in different circumstances. Now, the Vedic system, the varnashrama system, give a sort of map, route map for the personal evolution of every single individual, human being, and for the proper management of society. Now, the first step in the varnashrama dharma is the brahmacharya ashram. Now, brahmachari is the period of the individual life that goes from around 5 to generally up to 25 years of age, not older than that. There are exceptions of the Naishtika brahmacharis, but there are exceptions. Now, this is the stage of life where we learn mostly. So we take care of developing our Annamaya kosha, Pranamaya kosha, and Manomaya kosha, and Vijnanamaya kosha gradually. A child at the age of 5 obviously has to focus on the physical body, because the physical development of children is very important. It's the most important thing. If the physical development is not happening in children, the mental development, the energy and everything else are damaged. They cannot develop properly. So the Annamaya kosha is important. The physical body is important. We are not the physical body, but we need to learn to take care of the physical body. And this is mostly done, especially done, in the first stage of life. When one is a student, when we are students, we don't have so much responsibilities. We have duties, but they're not so much responsibilities, but rather they are training. So even if we fail, it's not a big deal. So the Annamaya kosha is the most important, because we need to grow up,
Well, do you know, that is really interesting, because I would have thought that most quote unquote spiritual people, when you hear that, they almost negate the emphasis on the physical body, whereas what's really interesting here is that the first thing you've said is that actually to develop that Annamaya kosha is fundamental in order to then develop the rest, so to speak, which is really
that's
interesting.
In fact, today I was doing some research. I don't know if you heard the term Manichaeism.
No, Mataji, I haven't. No.
Actually, Manichaeism was a very important religion and cultural influence that went from about in 200 of the current era up to 1300, 1400 of the current era. It was in the beginning, the formation period of Christianity, and it had a lot of contact with Buddhism. And in relationship with Christianity, actually Manichaeism developed from Mani. Mani was lived in Persia, in Iran, present Iran. And he started from his father was from a early community of Jewish Christians. And Mani went on from a very early age. He started to believe that he was the greatest and the last prophet in the history of mankind. And in fact, he like we are reminded of someone else. Okay. Right. So basically, Manichaeism very heavily influenced the development of Christianity, especially of Gnosticism. Augustine of Hippo was a Manichaeist before becoming an Orthodox Christian.
Is that the legendary Saint Augustine?
Yeah, exactly. That one. Yeah. Of which the present Pope Leo XIV is a follower, basically.
Right, so he's unknowingly following...
I mean, he's an Augustinian. His
Right. Okay. I'm
you
with you.
know, formation, I mean, you know, mental tendency is, you know, okay. So what
Yes.
happened is that Manichaeism was variously persecuted here and there, but it started in Iran, Persia. The state religion was Zoroastrianism. So Zoroaster, you heard about Zoroaster.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Zoroastra and yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, Asura Mazda and all that sort
Yeah,
of stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
So you know that there was a very strong distinction between good and evil.
Yes. Or I heard it was almost an inversion, so to speak.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
you go.
yes, exactly. The great Asura was became God, the god of good, you know, and the devils were painted as devils. But
Right. I'm with
the
you.
strong idea was that of a very strong distinction between the god of good and the god of evil.
Yes.
And the god of evil created the material world. So everything that was material was presented as evil.
Sounds like the demiurge, then, doesn't it? Basically, Mataji.
Exactly.
As
That's why I say it influenced a lot Gnosticism, the development, and especially the Cathars. The Cathars,
yes.
you know, were, you know, actually accused of being Manichaeans.
Mm. I mean, you know
So
what happened to them?
Manichaeism at some point was considered a heresy, so it was persecuted very actively. But the great diffusion, I mean, the spreading of Manichaeism happened mostly in Central Asia, when the king of the Uyghurs became a Manichaean and converted the entire people.
Right.
Just
Right.
like
Interesting.
more or less in the same period, the king of the Khazars became a Jew. So he converted all the people to Judaism. So the history of religion is much more complex than what we, you know, are usually
Indeed.
told.
Indeed. Indeed. So the Manichaeans were like
Yeah.
they. It's interesting how you're linking that then to these to the brahmacharis and the koshas, basically.
Yeah. So the idea is that you know, the influence of Manichaeism and in a sense that influenced Christianity as well is a condemnation of material nature, of the body, of all the natural you know, joys and pleasures of life, you know. So it percolated also in India. Now, on the other hand, the original Vedic knowledge presents the four principles, the four purposes of human life, the Purusharthas, the four Purusharthas are Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. So Kama is perfectly okay. In fact, in Bhagavad Gita,
Yes.
Krishna saying, Dharma viruddho, bhuteshu, kamosmi, bharatashu. Dharma viruddho means the karma that is not against dharma is not only a good thing, but actually it is divine, it is godly.
Yes. Yes. And that's the antithesis of
Yeah.
the self-flagellation that we find
Exactly. Yeah.
in Abramism, effectively.
Exactly.
So it's really interesting that the emphasis on the material body is the first, on the Anamaya Kosha, is the
Yes.
first sort of like principle taught to young boys and young girls.
Exactly. Yeah. To the children up to the age of the teenagers, to adolescence, puberty, they need to focus on their body because they have to develop properly, because health is actually a good thing,
Of course.
So, because if you are, that the ancient Romans got this idea, mens sana in corpore sano, means if the body is healthy, the mind will be healthy. But that applies mostly during childhood. Because once the body has developed, the health is something that is more or less taken for granted because, the good habits are developed, a strong immune system is developed, all the organs are functioning properly. So you don't have to cultivate so much the physical part because it's working. So
and it's interesting you say that because modern science is only now recently starting to catch up with that because
yes,
we now know that early life influences.
It's extremely important. Yeah. Instead, what they're doing now, they're giving excessive importance to the physical body after after the development in adult age, but not because they want health, because they want to be attractive.
Or they want longevity for the sake of longevity. So
yeah, they want, but because they want longevity because they want to be attractive.
And they fear death. They fear,
and because, especially because they fear death.
Yes.
But this has nothing to do with the Vedic system.
No. So all this cryo freezing business is just is completely.
Oh, it's totally stupid.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, during the brahmacharya stage, the first preoccupation was to keep, develop the physical part, the Annamaya kosha, and then start developing the pranamaya kosha, which is strictly connected with the Annamaya kosha, and then the manamaya kosha. So the children were gradually trained to control the mind.
What age did that start from, Mataji? I know there's variability, but roughly what age?
Yeah, that is relative because that's the beauty of the Vedic system of education, is that it was very personalized. The children were living with the guru, in the family of the guru, 24/7, without any vacations home. Until the time when they finished their education, they returned home. But as long as they were in the Gurukula, they were practically adopted by the Guru. So, they were totally focused. So the Guru could observe each student very carefully, and consistently. So each student was educated and trained according to, the individual possibilities, tendencies, guna and karma. So for people who had, students who showed the tendencies, Brahmana tendencies, the training of the mind became very early. Started very early. Because the child was able to take it, was actually eager to learn. For students who had Shudra tendencies, the training of the mind was not so important. Because Shudras are supposed to work mostly, they want to work mostly with their body. The control of the mind, the training of the mind for the Shudra students was basically, self-control. Like, discipline.
Yes.
But for a Brahmana student, it was a different thing. It was not just about discipline. So, the physical development is less important for a Brahmana than for a Shudra.
On a foundational level, all of them had it, because that's important. Is that right, Mataji?
Yeah. On the basic level, that's why we cannot say exactly at what age and what kind of phases and everything, because each student was an individual.
No, absolutely.
So, basically, then the Manamaya Kosha was important, in different ways for different types of students. And much more so the Vijnanamaya Kosha. Like a Shudra student would not be interested in developing the Vijnanamaya Kosha, because they didn't have the material. They didn't have the tendencies, the guna and the karma. They were not interested. So it's okay. Vijnanamaya Kosha will come by itself. Without trying to train it. So this was in the brahmacharya stage. Then the three higher categories, the three higher varnas or dvijas, entered the grihastha ashram. Shudras didn't need to enter the grihastha ashram. They could, of course, have a family, but they didn't have the duties of the grihasthas. So, according to the specific guna and karma of each householder, they would apply, they would, perform their specific duties. Now, in the Vanaprastha stage, the Annamaya Kosha becomes less important. Also because naturally at a certain age, the physical body starts to decline anyway.
Yes.
So you don't, how much care you put into the physical body. You cannot expect to have a very healthy and functional body while you, become older. So you don't give too much importance. So you start, you develop a training, more training of the mind and the Vijnanamaya Kosha, because in that way you will also be more detached from the inevitable sufferings of old age and death. Because if you're not attached to the body, if you're not focusing on the body, you won't notice pain in the same way. So that was a natural development. Vanaprasthas and then even more sannyasis were expected to care less for the Annamaya Kosha. Like, the Vanaprastha would not, do very elaborate cooking, because he was not expected to do all the rituals. Of course, again, not everybody was expected to become a Vanaprastha. Like, for example, of course the Shudras would not be expected to, but not even the Vaishyas were expected to become Vanaprasthas. So the Vaishyas, could normally, it was perfectly normal for a Vaishya to remain in the family even after the, productive age.
So
Retire. Yeah,
so it was only the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas who did the
yeah,
Vanaprashta
exactly.
and the sannyasa stage. Is that right, basically?
And the sannyasa stage was meant only for the Brahmanas, not for the
Oh, right.
Kshatriyas.
Okay.
Not even for the
Okay.
Kshatriyas.
Okay, that's interesting.
Because the sannyasa stage is a total renunciation towards the physical body. So unless you have a very strong Anandamaya kosha, sannyasa is not recommended. In fact,
is that because
yeah.
is that because you'll go mad, so to speak, quote unquote?
Yeah,
is that
you
right,
just cannot keep up. It's not sustainable. In fact, it is said, I'm sure you read that in Kali Yuga, taking sannyas is actually, not recommended at all. I wouldn't say prohibited, know, but not something you're supposed to do.
But can I ask you to expand on the relationship between sannyasa and the Anandamaya kosha? What's it doing at the kosha level when people undertake sannyasa strictly according to Vedic tradition?
Yeah, because the sannyasa order of life, the sannyasa ashram, is meant to detach completely from the physical body, from all types of social life, all type of physical activities. It's a preparation for death. So when we move from the one level of existence to the other, the Annamaya kosha, we leave it behind, and the Pranamaya kosha as well. We only take with ourselves a bit of Pranamaya kosha, not much. Mostly the prana will be dissolved in nature again. So we are, you remember Krishna Gita says that the Atman is carried by the mind to the next body, just like the air carries the smell.
Yes.
So basically, in the sannyasa ashram, already the vanaprastha ashram, we concentrate more on the vijnana, manomaya kosha and vijnanamaya kosha. Means we need to study. We need to turn towards the antaryagya, the manasa puja, the meditation, contemplation, yoga, elevating the energy. It's inner life, which doesn't need the physical body or the body of energy. In fact, the entire pranayama of yoga is meant to learn to stop the breathing, not to make it more powerful, like many people think.
Yes, that is the concept. That is the preconception I had. Certainly.
Yeah. Because they connect the prana with the oxygen. So they believe that the pranamaya, you have to breathe more so that your blood becomes more oxygenated and you improve your metabolism, your brain is functioning more because you have more oxygen and everything. But that's not the point. You have read, I think you have read, the stories of yogis who go to meditate, practice yoga under water.
Yes.
So how much are you breathing there?
And we also know that you only have a finite number of breaths in this world as well, don't
by the way, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that is, that is less important. But the point is, because it can easily be misconstrued and misused as an idea. Now, let's try to understand the point that the prana is supposed to become stable, not to run up and down and everywhere, because when the prana is stable, the mind can focus better.
That's really interesting, because what you're saying is that, and this is a very practical takeaway for all of us, is that it's the stability of the pranamaya on a day-to-day basis that then strengthens the manamaya. That's what you're saying, effectively.
Exactly.
So eating well, keeping yourself, doing all the stretches and the yoga and the weights and all this lot, eating sattvic food, sleeping regularly, these things keep that mind as strong as possible. That's what you're saying.
Because they made the body as strong as possible. Because eating well, sattvic food is, not only on the pranamaya kosha, but mostly on the annamaya kosha. The manamaya kosha is gradually detaching from the prana. The manamaya, the training of the mind, wants to detach from the physical body and from the energy body as well.
What does that look like, Mataji, in your experience, when that starts to happen?
Quiet. It looks like quiet. It looks like, the opposite of a gym. You get the idea of the gym.
Yeah. I mean, I go to the gym regularly.
Yeah, exactly. That's not what you need to do when you want to train the mind. In fact, the asana of yoga is teaching you how to keep a sitting posture. Stay still. Not moving, and the dance yoga is stupid.
Yes.
Yoga is not a dynamic exercise. It's not a sport.
No.
It's controlling the body to keep still. Asana. But what is the meaning of asana? Asana means sitting down. Sit. Right?
So I've got a few. This is really fascinating because I've got a few sort of spin-off questions. There's a lot of emphasis now, Mataji, on the mind and the body, the axis. You've heard of that being
the spine.
Popularized, the mind-body axis. That's been popularized. I personally think they're rehashing Vedic concepts. But do you think that is linked with what you've been talking about now, Mataji, basically?
Yeah, it is linked because the body and mind are connected if you identify with them. But we are supposed to overcome the identification, with the body and the mind. We are supposed to leave them behind. We're not supposed to, align, energize all of them so it's one harmonious unit. No, not at all. Not at all. That's why the ashram system, is going from the first, the development of the annamaya kosha, the physical body, and then the mental body in the children. But when you enter the vanaprastha ashram, the vanaprastha stage and the sannyasa stage, you need to detach from the body and the mind. Not because they're bad. Again, it's not a Manichaean or a Zoroastrian or a Christian Gnostic idea that the body is bad, we need to leave it behind. No, but because we are not the body, we have to prepare ourselves to do without.
So the aim is really to separate the mind from the body. Is that right? And the prana. Is that right, Mataji? Basically?
Yeah, exactly. That's the second step. The first step is to develop the physical body and the prana. Second step is to develop the mind, which is still working with the physical body. Then the third step is to detach oneself from the physical body to, a number of practices of vratas, like the vanaprasthas are practically doing a lot of vratas.
Does this detachment process occur at the grihastha stage, or does it occur at the
it starts with the vanaprastha stage.
So it's not something that ordinary householders do.
It's not a good idea. No, it's not a good idea. Because in the grihastha stage, you have a job. You have professional duties.
Thinking. Yeah. If I started detaching myself in this manner, I would dread to think what would happen to my sort of job and family, etc.
Exactly. You go down the drain. Yeah. So the vratas that grihasthas follow are, less and less demanding than what, is supposed to be, is expected from the vanaprasthas and the sannyasis.
It's really interesting, Mataji, because, listening to stories in my childhood, you would hear that of older people like grandparents going very quiet as they went older, almost being quote unquote reclusive. They never spoke much. Is that linking?
Yeah.
Is that linking?
Yeah.
I mean, these are old stories that that came from an era that's probably bygone now.
Yeah.
But is that part of this process?
The very definition of vanaprastha means you go to the forest. You live in the forest. Forest means isolated place, away from social contacts, away from family, relatives, job. You go and isolate yourself. And that's when you give more, importance to the vratas, to the yoga practices, because now you don't have the responsibilities of, professional and family responsibilities. You can focus more on these, Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya. It's not a prohibition, it's not compulsory, but, seriously, when you get older, you don't have the same energy, you don't have the same physical and mental capabilities anymore.
So this then leads me to another question, Mataji, if you will.
Sure.
Most people, whether they are European, Indian, or whatever, they discover this knowledge often when they are a little bit older, Mataji. So the average person following your work, listening to this, will have already been through their childhood, adolescence. They'll be adults, and
they need to catch up a little bit. Yeah.
So they'll be adults, and they'll be sat there thinking, I'm now an adult. And I've been through, I live in the Kali Yuga, I've been through a average, ordinary childhood without this knowledge. So let's say I'm somebody in my 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever it may be, and I've got my job, etc. And I'm living in this world, but I'm now aware of this knowledge. But I can't obviously go back to my childhood and start living again. And I can't retire like a vanaprastha and detach my mind. How do I approach this practically? Do I, to develop my pranamaya, my my manamaya and intellect? Let's assume that I'm not a manual worker purely. and even if I am, let's just say, what do I do with
That's
with a
exactly why.
retrospectoscope?
That's exactly why you need a guru, because the guru knows you personally. So the guru can help you, build your sadhana, your way of life, your goals, your exercise, your practice, your knowledge, your application, your realizations, because each person is different. You can be 30 years old and decide you don't want to marry and you had enough of a
Yes,
regular work
yes, yes,
job and
yes,
just
yeah.
dedicate totally to spiritual life.
Of course, but I guess my
And
point,
if you have actually in the Vedic system, one goes to retire as vanaprastha at the age of 50. The Shastra say Pancha Sattvam Balam
well, in the way the West is going, Mataji, I can't
It's
see
not
anyone.
happening.
Well, the way the West is going, Mataji, I can't see anyone retiring until they're 85.
Exactly.
The way
Yeah.
things are going. So
Exactly.
where I'm going with this, Mataji, is simply to ask you that it's never too late to
Yes.
apply
Right.
this
Yeah.
knowledge. That's my point. That's where I'm coming from, Mataji, effectively. Is that right?
Yeah, but again, it's a matter of personalizing your situation. You need to understand your time, place, and individual situation, because otherwise you cannot. At 70, you cannot start focusing on your physical body, because
No.
I've never been a brahmachari, so I have to start from the Annamaya kosha. It's not going to work.
However, is there a balance between that, but also not neglecting your physical body?
No, you don't
Because
need to. It's a personal thing. You cannot generalize it. We want to be personalists. Yeah, so we need to be personal.
because
Yeah.
because most people who are middle-aged, they have to work, so therefore
Yeah.
they have to be healthy to a point. So there has to be some focus, surely, on the Annamaya and the Pranamaya kosha, effectively.
Yeah, that's what you were saying before. Eating well, doing a bit of exercise, sleeping well, having good hygiene habits and stuff. This is for the Annamaya kosha. You can do at any time, but it depends on your duties, your circumstances, your personal circumstances, because there are people maybe who work for up to 50, and then they put aside sufficient money, they can retire. And again, there are people who can retire when they're 30, 25, whatever.
Now
Because
this is a point, Mataji, that I wanted to ask you about, because
yeah.
there is retirement in the West where people, and in the East now, where people just retire, quote unquote, and then they just do whatever they please to serve themselves.
Yeah, well, it depends on what you want to do.
Indeed. But my point is that would it not be better? Is it not better to work for a higher purpose than necessarily retire for the next 30 years of your life to go on one holiday?
First of all, there is no guarantee that if you retire at 50, you're going to live for another 30 years.
Actually, it's quite the opposite, Mataji.
Yeah.
I've noticed that a lot of people develop.
No, that's because people arrive to their old age and they have no idea what is the purpose of life.
Yes.
So, as you said correctly, they want to do whatever they please.
Yes.
and they don't know what they want to do, what they're supposed to do to get actual satisfaction and happiness. They think that they want to enjoy life, go on a cruise,
They jet set from one
jet
cruise
set,
to one holiday to
whatever,
the other.
But that's not going to give happiness to anyone. You know how many very rich people commit suicide or do very stupid things.
But not just that. On a practical level, I've
Yeah.
noticed that when people quote unquote retire, all these health problems tend to surface, which is really interesting. I don't think it's coincidental either.
Well, okay. Might be two possibilities. One, the possibility is that they're coming with old age, whether they retire or they don't retire. Okay, which is a fact of life. When you get older, even if you have to work until you're 85, you have health issues. Because as the ancient Romans say, that old age is itself a disease.
Yes.
So it's not that these health problems come out when you retire. No, these problems come out when you get old. Okay, one, and probably you notice them more because when you are, pulling the cart, you could not afford to notice your health problems. You had to put them aside. You had to neglect them because you cannot afford to take rest. You cannot afford to take care of your health. But that's not intelligent. So sometimes, if you, for example, when you are on the battlefield and you get wounded, it's a problem, right? But if you stop fighting, they will kill you. So you have to forget the pain of the wound, and forget the bleeding and just go on fighting. But that's not because when you stop fighting, then you start having health problems. You can actually afford to notice them. You see, this is
There's another. But there's another school of thought.
Yeah.
And that is, I've read about Riddhi and how disease starts, and often there's a link between your thoughts
Exactly.
and disease.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
in fact, Ayurvedic medicines teaches that there are three causes for disease. One is bad food, the other one is a bad physical hygiene, and the other one is a bad mental hygiene. So when you are not, that was the second thing that I was going to talk about. So when you are not forced to control your mind through the discipline means I have to do my job, I have to take care of this, I have to do that, the mind becomes, what to say, wilder. Because you have more time and you don't know how to control your mind, so the mind is going to eat you up.
But also, Mataji, when I was reading through, I think they're called koshas or so. I supposed to be akin to that. What was really interesting was that if you develop the opposite of vidya, if you are if your mind starts to develop thoughts that are dualistic, that are about non-detachment, what happens is that the disease originates from those thoughts. I guess that's where I'm coming from, Mataji. And when you've got a job and you're so busy, that's why there's this Christian saying, which is the devil makes work of idle hands.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I wonder whether there's a linkage between that and early retirement.
I just said that, that when you are not, you are not forced to control your mind to the application to your job or other responsibilities, that your mind becomes wilder because you're not used, you've not trained your mind properly. So the mind is like, a wild horse that is, set free. If the horse has been trained properly, it's good because the horse can do other stuff, If the horse has not been trained, it will start running here and there and, fall down in some precipice or, some bog or some other thing, because there is a repression that is liberated. It's like a spring. When you take a spring, you compress a spring, the kinetic energy doesn't go away. Repression doesn't make problems go away.
So where I'm going with this mostly is that isn't this why karma yoga is prescribed for everybody? Because isn't that a way to control your mana maya?
Okay. We need to understand what karma yoga is, because probably your karma yoga is a bit confused by the institutionalized
yes, please correct it. Please correct it.
Yeah. Karma yoga means whatever, like Krishna says in Gita, Yad karoshi yad asnasi yad juhosi dadasi yad kurusvama madarpanam. Whatever you do it as a yagya, as an act of sacred act offered to the Supreme. So the karma yoga you do depends on your position. It's not that when you retire you have to go to some temple to clean the floor, otherwise your mind is not going to be happy. Anything that you do, if you do it with the spirit of karma yoga, with the knowledge and understanding and dedication and bhakti, that will be karma yoga, will be satisfying.
Indeed.
That's not some particular seva you do for an organization.
No. My point here is exactly that, because let's contrast that to a lot of what 60-year-olds do now, which is as soon as they finish their job, their mindset is right. Well, next week I've got this world cruise booked.
Yeah.
When I come back 2 months later, my big priority is going to be getting that new dining table at home. So
otherwise they feel bored. They don't have any purpose in life.
Exactly. So my point, Mataji, is that not a fertile ground for disease to develop?
Yeah, but that didn't start when they retired. It was already there. All those desires were there, but they were repressed because they couldn't afford to use the time and energy and money for other things. Because they had to, pull the cart, turn the grinding stone,
No, but my point is that if your life's work is based for the service of Shri Krishna, for God, then there's less ground for these thoughts to originate, because you are spiritually busy, Mataji. That's my point, isn't it?
But also in the Grihastha ashram, until the Industrial Revolution, people were working much less than they have to do now. during
Yes,
their professional,
yes.
life.
Yes, there's a saying that the peasants actually had more holiday
Yeah,
than we do now, basically,
yeah,
effectively. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. Today, people don't have time to even to breathe. Because they have to work 8 hours plus they have to commute, and commuting is work. It's part of the work. you know and then in until the industrial revolution, people basically, most people worked where they lived. And this is also in the Vedic system. You have your shop in your house. you know
Yes,
you live in your shop.
yes,
You have your private rooms, and then you have the shop. Because
yes.
that's practical, that's intelligent.
And that's where a lot of traditional, that's how a lot of traditional businesses ran all over the
Exactly,
world,
exactly, because
effectively, isn't
that's natural, and that's clever, and that's practical, and that's very, very, very useful. But
it? Mm.
then again, you work much less, because let's say, for example, people who work, they have a shop next to the house. Practically, they only work if some customer comes inside the shop.
Yes, yes,
you
indeed,
know,
indeed.
because they have this bell at the door, pling
Mm.
plong, and for the rest of the time, if no customers come,
Mm.
they're not
Mm.
working.
Exactly. So you've now gone to the next question I had, and you know what? I initially thought this would only be a short session, but
Yeah,
as usual, it's gone
right.
on. But
Yeah.
there's a very important subject. There's a very important
Yeah,
point
I
here
agree.
that I think is important, and that is, Mataji, that do you know when the neophyte first reads about the koshas, and including myself, the first thing they think of is the aim of life is to, don't laugh when you hear this, the aim of life is to breach the koshas and become Atman. That is what a
Well,
lot of people think. Now the question
yeah,
is
well,
that
yeah.
that's not quite
Not
true. When I
exactly. Not exactly.
So
Yeah.
what I'd like to know from you is, Mataji, is that how do you approach this quote unquote, is the point of this knowledge not to breach the kushas but more to nurture the kushas properly? How do we approach the existence of these kushas effectively, Mataji?
Well, in the same way, we practice the Kundalini yoga. First, we start from the Muladhara chakra, and then we rise our consciousness. We don't need to neglect anything. But we move our attention to higher purposes. Now, the point is, as we said in the beginning, this Manichaean idea that the body is bad, material nature is bad, evil. We need to fight against it. We need to mortify the body. Christians, especially Catholics, they have this crazy masochistic idea. They need to mortify their body, to torture their body. Because Jesus Christ, you see this Jesus crucifix tortured, and that's the best thing you can do in life. Suffer. Like what? So that we should forget about that, because that's toxic. That's not healthy at all. But the point is, there is nothing wrong in taking care of the Annamaya kosha and the Pranamaya kosha, Manomaya kosha, and so on. By we become a higher awareness, a higher purpose of life. Because just taking care of the physical body is not much of a purpose of life for a human being. When you see people who get into the adult life or in old age are just worried about their physical body, frankly, that's a bit pathetic. Because they will be too attached, and when it's time to to die, they are, they will not be ready to die. So, but they have to go anyway. So that's a lot of unnecessary suffering. You understand? So it's
Yes,
not
absolutely.
that we condemn the material nature. We don't
No.
see it as evil or demoniac or horrible, disgusting, degraded. No. This is all part of the package.
Yes. I guess where I'm coming from, Mataji, is that you can actually, on a more practical level, like for instance, when I go to the gym, Mataji, there's two types of gym. Well, there's the gym person who lifts purely for aesthetic purposes, and then
Yeah.
there's and then there's the gym person who sees the material body as a vehicle for a higher purpose. So
Yeah,
therefore, I
exactly.
must look
Yeah.
after that material body because I need that material body for something higher. So therefore, that's important. So I think there's two camps within
Yeah.
doing the same thing, by the way, lifting weights,
Yeah.
but they're not. One person thinks of it from a purely aesthetic point of view, and the other person,
That's why we need to personalize.
yes,
We cannot generalize,
yes,
because each individual is in a very particular, special position. Guna, karma, obligations, situations, circumstances, time, place, physical condition. There are so many things that need to, be taken into consideration. We cannot generalize. That's why we need the expert guidance. We need, to actually understand how to apply according to our particular situation.
yes, exactly. So my point here, Mataji, is that it's not about breaking the koshas to
Yeah.
become quote unquote Atman. That's just not going to happen. It's more about nurturing the koshas and looking after each kosha and understanding that you are not just the anamaya. You have all these other layers to you, and they're all connected, and all of them need to be nurtured in the ways that you've mentioned effectively.
Yeah, in different ways according to the circumstances, yes.
So, because again, there's this view that, oh, I am Atman, therefore I am going to breach these koshas by doing yoga. That again is slightly erroneous.
Yoga doesn't mean breaching, it means controlling.
Or communion with the supreme consciousness.
Union, yeah. But it's more about controlling oneself, controlling a physical body and mental body and everything, more than, breaching or removing or destroying them.
Yes.
Because
yes.
that, I heard people saying that mantra means liberating oneself from the mind. That's stupid. If you liberate yourself, first of all, you cannot liberate yourself from the mind. It's like when you say, I want to liberate, mind is a material element. It's like saying, I want to liberate myself from water.
That's like breaching. That's almost like breaching the koshas, so to speak.
That's stupid, because you cannot. You can develop beyond limitations. We are supposed to develop our consciousness beyond the limitations. But that doesn't mean that we go against anything. Going against means repression.
Yes, exactly.
And repression, it has been amply proven that whatever you repress becomes stronger, more relevant, we'll say. Not stronger in the positive sense. Becomes more relevant.
Yes, because you're still focusing your consciousness on it, so you'll
Yeah,
become that, won't you,
exactly.
effectively?
Yeah.
So, Mataji, I have got a question for you, an
Okay.
open-ended question, but related to this. You've touched on it very nicely here. Yoga, Mataji. What is the end point? What is the end point of
Come
yoga,
again. What
Mataji?
is the end point of what?
Of yoga. The word quote unquote yoga. You know, you see this term
The
banded
purpose
everywhere.
of yoga?
Yes, end point. What is
Oh,
the
the end
purpose?
point. Yeah, well, Gita is explaining it very nicely. Yoga, the practice of yoga is the union with the Supreme, and the starts with the control of the body and the mind, of one's body and one's mind, and then goes into the jnana yoga, vijnana yoga, then we have the sannyasa yoga. You go and see the chapters of Bhagavad Gita, the titles.
So what I'm saying here,
Yeah,
Mataji, is that what's emphasized in the Bhagavad Gita is linked to these koshas, isn't it? Am I right, basically?
yeah. Everything is connected.
That's
This
where I'm
is the
coming from here,
beauty.
Mataji.
Yeah, this is the beauty of the plan. It's an organic, holistic plan.
Because
Yeah.
one thing I've noticed, and again, it's because of the discussions here and also reading your Bhagavad Gita purports, is that Sri Krishna mentions the prana. Sri Krishna mentions
Sure.
the mind. Sri
Yeah.
Krishna mentions, he says the mind is like wild horses, etc. Sri Krishna mentions the intellect. Sri Krishna talks about the ahamkara. All these koshas are actually detailed, and how to sort of view them properly, and nurture. That's all outlined very nicely in the Bhagavad Gita. Would that be a reasonable inference there,
Yeah,
Mataji?
of course. Again, we have the Bhagavad. You go and see Bhagavad Gita. First chapter, Arjuna Vishada Yoga. First of all, you need to realize that you can do better. There is scope for improvement. You want to solve. You are aware of the problem. Okay, so we want to fix the problem, overcome the problem. Then we start with the Sankhya Yoga, means the analysis of the problem. Okay, Arjuna, I have a problem. So, okay, let's see what is the problem. The problem is that you think you're the body. Okay, okay. So, I'm not the body. Okay. So, we analyze. Sankhya means analysis. Okay. Then we have the Karma Yoga, means, okay, whatever you're doing, according to your Desha Kalapatra, you can upgrade it to Karma Yoga by applying the proper consciousness. Okay, then we have the Jnana Yoga. Okay, so the Jnana Yoga is, let me see the chapters, because sometimes I forget. Okay, Bhagavad Gita chapters. Okay, so we have Vishada Yoga, Sankhya, Karma Yoga, Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Jnana Vijnana Yoga, Akshara Brahma Yoga, Raja Vidya, Vibhuti Yoga, Vishwarupa Darsana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga, Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, Purushottama Yoga, Daivasura Sampada Vibhaga Yoga, Shraddha Traya Vibhaga Yoga, and Moksha Sannyasa Yoga. This is our journey. This is the journey of yoga, the journey of our consciousness. The karma yoga is, you can start wherever you are. You don't have to start from brahmacharya or grihasthas or sannyas or whatever. Whatever you do can be karma yoga.
Excellent. So,
Yeah.
my final question on this
Yeah.
is when the Gita speaks of merging into the Supreme Brahman, I forget the exact verse. Now, is that the end point of yoga, Mataji? And
Krishna
what does that
doesn't
look
say.
like?
Yeah, Bhagavad Gita says they enter into me.
That's right. Yes, sorry. Enter into me. That's
that doesn't. Yeah, it's not enter into Brahman. They're not merging into Brahman. That's also another very widespread
let's not go there. Let's not go there. But let's say enter into me.
Yes.
That I think is the end point of yoga.
Yeah, the consciousness. Yeah.
What happens that? What does that look like in practice, Mataji?
Krishna. Arjuna asked the same question. Arjuna asked, what are the characteristics of someone who is established in a sthita pragya? How does he speak? How does he walk? What does he do? And Krishna is saying, that whatever the body does, the sthita pragya is perfectly aware that the body is working, the body and mind are working. And Krishna says, guna guneshu vartante. The gunas must be engaged in the gunas. So the higher, the end purpose, the end point, as you say, of yoga is consciousness. Entering into that supreme consciousness. That consciousness that Krishna says, me. So, I don't know if you want to call it Krishna consciousness, but that can be very misunderstood as a definition.
And you know why I ask?
Yeah.
Because, again, there's a misconception that what that means is that you suddenly float off to another place. But that is the misconception.
Yeah, I know.
But my point is that you can enter into me, quote unquote, simply by but not necessarily leave your material body.
That's called Jivan Mukta. First we have to attain the consciousness. When we attain the consciousness, when we enter into the supreme consciousness, then at the time when we leave the body, we won't need another body because we are already in the consciousness. Most people think, the opposite, that one can attain moksha only after giving up the body. When you die, you get moksha. No. If you hadn't, attained moksha before you die, when you die, you simply take another body. So there's no moksha there. Does that answer your question?
Yes. But what I'm saying, absolutely, Mataji. And you know where this misconception comes from? There's an Abrahamic projection that liberation, quote unquote, is a paradise, and that's crept into, unfortunately, Hindu thought, where the sure sign of liberation is when something outwardly miraculous happens. There's some form of magical event that it looks like that you suddenly leave it's synonymous with leaving a material body, and whereas this is not the case. Would that be fair, Mataji?
I agree.
So this entering into me is at the level of consciousness primarily. It may or may not have material manifestations, but it's primarily at the level of consciousness. That's what you're saying. That's the end point of yoga, isn't it, Mataji? You can still be John Smith living your life and have that without necessarily John Smith leaving his body and floating off somewhere as Atman. That's the point. That's where I'm coming from, really, Mataji. That's the whole.
That's why Krishna said, death is certain for those who were born, and birth is certain for those who die. So where is the moksha?
Very good. Mataji, it's been a wonderful session. I think we've covered a lot of ground. I had some, follow-ups from the previous discussions, which I think, you've clarified those inquiries very well. So I'd
Excellent.
like to thank you, Mataji, for an excellent session as
Welcome,
always.
welcome. Thanks to you for, prompting it up. Okay. Jai.
Jai
Jai
Shrimanarayan.
Shrimanarayan.
Jai Raj.